Welcome to the Building One Story at a Time podcast.
We're your hosts. I'm Katie Herbine.
And I'm Stephanie LaChance.
Today, we're talking with Adam Coe, our design build specialist in our custom homes and remodeling division of EGStoltzfus.
You look confused about that. You're like, is he
I was like, I think that's...
Yeah. What does he actually do here?
No, we're so excited to have you join us today, Adam, and learn a little bit more about our custom home and remodeling division and also the process. But let's get started with just a brief introduction to who you are, maybe like your background, educational background, your history with EGStoltzfus.
Sure. Yeah. So I am a Lancaster native, born here, went to school here, went to Penn Manor, and then went to a lovely little school called Thaddeus Stevens.
I know it very well, yes.
Yes, we do.
So I went there for architectural design, which was now this is quite a while ago, but this is a pretty phenomenal program at the time. They were very, very focused on understanding the mechanics of how a house goes together and maybe less about sketching out bowls of fruit and photorealistic stuff. And not that that stuff isn't important, but I think that Stevens understood that they wanted graduates who would understand how to put things together. And also, first and foremost, probably how to learn. And so that's really helped tremendously as I started at EGStoltzfus. I got hired at EG on my 20th birthday, just celebrated my 43rd birthday. So I've been there for 23 years, and it's really been a pretty phenomenal path. It's been very exciting working there. So I took that architectural degree. I started in just essentially doing red line drafting in the remodel division. And then as the remodel division got bigger, I got more excited about meeting people, speaking with them, sort of asking about their ideas. It allowed me to get a little bit of creativity in there without anybody else sort of in the way of that. So they allowed me to step out from underneath the guy that had hired me and said, "Hey, why don't you try to chase a few jobs yourself? Try to talk to these people and see what you can do for them." And then ultimately, that just turned into remodeling, expanding. Our team grew, and then as of the last 6 months, Larry Scheckler, who was the previous design build specialist for customs, he knew he was getting ready to retire, so he took me under his wing for the last year or so. And I was able to take some of the language that goes along with remodel, apply that to custom homes. And because of that, it's been really this phenomenal fit of custom and remodel together. And mainly because when you're customizing a house, it's very much like a remodel job is. You have to ask a lot of questions. You have to talk about feelings a lot. What's this space going to be? Mm-hmm. Because when it is custom, you can't really walk through it. I can't say, "Hey, go here, take a look at this," but imagine the windows are a different color, or imagine the floor is a little bit different. So you got to be a pretty good communicator, and that translates very well to remodel. Because if you're not talking in remodel and you're standing in somebody's house and you're breaking things apart and you're kicking up dust, people are not going to feel good. And if you don't know how to talk and explain and make sure that people know how to speak and when it's, how to ask questions and how to work as a team, you can get yourself into some trouble. So that jump from remodel to custom has been well fit and really, really quite enjoyable.
Can you talk a little bit about the type of language and the type of questions that you would use to kind of discover a little bit more about someone's goals in their remodel or custom build, and then how their answers to those questions would direct your designing?
Yeah, so that's actually a great question. That's a lot of times where we start is I have built houses and remodels for a very long time. I know the words to use to put a house together. If you come in and you say, "Hey, Adam, I'd like to build a house," it's not fair of me to expect you to understand that language. So generally, and with the resources that we have now and with social media, really the best way that I tell homeowners is get together some photos. Take a look at some things. What do you like and what do you don't like? Mm-hmm. And then when we're sitting and we're putting things together, you can point to a photo and say, "Hey, this is this thing that I think is really cool." Mm-hmm. And then it's like, great. I know what you want, so let's put that in. Let's start to incorporate that in. When it comes to things like flow, that's probably where I'm going to try to give a little bit more assistance, because the average person doesn't know how to set up a house and move from room to room, and how do you plan for furniture? How does a kitchen work in the most functional way? So I'll give some input there, but then always just want to make sure to keep asking questions. Hey, how do you live your life now? When you pull something out of the fridge, where do you put it? When you're cooking or when you're prepping, how do you do that?
Yeah.
Because I could certainly design something that just fits me, but most people don't live their, everybody lives their life a little bit differently. So you're doing them a disservice if you're just kind of focused on, well, here's what I think looks right, and here's what I think functions properly. Because everybody's lives work in much different ways. So yeah, when I say ask questions, it's really, I'm asking them questions about how do they live?
Yeah.
How do they live now? What works? What doesn't work? And then when you picture yourself walking into a room, how do you see that? When you picture yourself going to lay down and take a nap in the living room, how does that feel to you? And then you try to pull in those words and those concepts, and you start to apply it into the blueprint.
I think it's kind of interesting. We do a lot of like interview type of things too in our position. And I think sometimes people don't even realize the information that they're telling you, how helpful it can be. Like they think something is so trivial, but it's actually like a big detail to really assist the way that we're going to design.
Or they might think, why are they even asking me that? But then what's great is, especially the inspiration photos, like we try to call back to those. Like we'll say, we showed you these full overlay cabinets with 5-piece drawer fronts because they were in almost all of your inspiration photos, whether or not you noticed it.
Yeah, right. Sometimes people don't know they're inspired by things until you say, here's the mechanical way to say the thing that you're showing me that you like. And then they go, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
And the fun thing about what remodel was when I was doing that is that I would get on a second or a third job. You'd build these long relationships with people, because once you trust somebody that you remodel with, and you hear all the scary stories about other remodeling companies and nightmares that can happen there, you keep revisiting the same people, and their language starts to get more in tune to construction.
Yeah.
And I've had a few clients where we've done 3 or 4 projects, and by the last project, like they're speaking the way our site managers will speak, or they'll show a photo and they'll be like, yeah, here's the reason why I like an inset door versus a full overlay door. And it's just like, wow, okay. So that's great. But no, that's a great point that you're making, is that people will bring in things that they love and they don't know why they love it. And when you start to use words around it, and honestly, a lot of it goes back to feeling. This is how this feels when you touch it, or this is how this feels when you see it all placed up.
Yeah.
That helps them unlock a little bit and go, okay, yeah, I think that is what I'm trying to pursue. And then as you're going through every other selection, I'm sure you guys have run into this, once you get one thing sort of dialed in, and once you start to dial into their language, the rest of it just opens right up.
Yep.
And it gets really, really fun. And then you have a week that goes by and you get a few calls and emails that go, I don't know, I'm nervous about this. It doesn't feel good. And you go, it's no problem. Let's get back in. Let's look at it again. And you'll have people walk the whole way around the store and then pick something out, and they go, actually, I kind of like this. And we're like, good. That's the first thing that you picked anyways. Have you guys had that happen?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah.
They're like full circle. It's like, we've picked something, we move on. They come back and they're like, I don't know, it's just not sitting right. And then they're like, okay, maybe this one. We're like, yep, that's actually the one that we thought you were going to pick. We had that in your design concept for you.
Honestly, I think that's the best feeling.
Yeah.
Because it really feels, you genuinely feel like they have connected to the thing that they went inside of their home. And the doubting process that they had, they then got to go and just sort of reaffirm, yes, all right, I know that I'm on the right track.
And I think that puts into their mind like, okay, this designer really understands what I'm looking for, even if I'm maybe not articulating it in the right way. And I think that could be why we have such long relationships with our remodel clients, is because they have your trust. They understand that you know them, like you get them and you're working for them.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, I say this a lot, so it sounds a little canned in my head, but I genuinely mean it. when we go and we meet with a homeowner, and especially when we're doing a remodel, we say, look, all right, there's the design and there's the build, and that's great. But let's be really honest. There is going to be things that go wrong. You can't avoid it. And especially when you get into remodels that are $500,000 or $800,000, there's so many things that are being touched and so many pieces that move. And then you take that and you add on to it that a lot of times they're living there and they have kids and they have pets and they have some days that are great. There's some days they go to work and they have a really bad day and they come home and there's someone standing in the kitchen and that guy is asking a bunch of questions and overwhelming. You have to talk about those things up front. Person is human, so things are going to go wrong. And so if you want to be a competent builder, a competent remodeler, you have to make sure that you're forward with people and say, look, we're going to hit these snags, and as soon as we do, we have to talk about it. And one of the things we're going to talk about is how do you feel, and the other is it's my responsibility and my team's responsibility to go to them and say, we found a problem. Here are some solutions through this problem. And honestly, what I have found now that we have those types of conversations with homeowners is that when a problem arises, there's far less pain involved and more of like, hey guys, yeah, so this thing didn't line up right, and I wish it would have, but we're here. So how do we make an adjustment? The other thing is just our Darren and Justin and Brandon, our site managers, they're so in tune. So they're listening and they're paying attention as they're building. They will force homeowners to ask questions. They will force homeowners to not just quietly go, yeah, everything looks great. They're like, yeah, but what about this? Or what about this?
Right. Like really dig in.
The intention is to say, like, we're doing this with you, not for you. And so we want you to be observant of what's going on, because we want to build the right thing for you. Because we can be like a freight train. Like we want to hit deadlines. We want to get out of their way. We want them to be moved into their space. And so when you say go, we go. And so we all have to remind ourselves that, like, that's good, but let's make sure that everybody's still looking at the same thing and feeling the same way before we take another step and maybe discomfort starts to compound. So that's really how you want to build a good relationship. You got to talk a lot. You got to be honest. And then you got to start to look at it as like, this is a team thing. You aren't paying us to build you something. You and I were participating together. The role that I play is to make sure that all the scary things and all the bad things that happen when you're trying to build a house or build a remodel, that I take all that data, I can cipher it down to, these are only the things that I really need your input on, and then get that from the homeowner. And then that way they can avoid all the pain that happens in the background when you're building stuff or building stuff in general. And again, I know both you guys know this. I mean, I know that both of you run this into this stuff all the time. So
it sounds like you do a lot of work in that trust building process too, to help avoid like your clients from feeling decision fatigue. What are maybe some of the specific strategies that you guys use? Because I'd say that probably is a hallmark of doing a custom home or even a remodeling job, is that there are going to be a lot of decisions.
Yes. Yeah. Well, so let me ask you guys, how do you, when you're 2 hours in and you can see the eyes glazing over and you can see like, what is your trick to sort of helping to navigate that? What have you found to be
offer
successful?
Snacks.
Yes, we have a very wide array of snacks.
Didn't notice there's a lot of snacks.
There's energy drinks in the fridge. There's some alcohol in the fridge.
No, that's a good question. And man, I wasn't expecting you to turn it around on me. Well, I'd say since we do run a team approach, just like you guys do, we feed off of each other's energy. So if one of us maybe notices a lull, maybe it's the other person's time to step in. So we'll kind of like tag team that.
Yeah, like
tap each other in if needed. If we're like, I just can't get them through this. Then the other one will kind of step in and say, let's table this and focus on this instead.
Yeah, like decision fatigue is real. It's a very real thing. And I think bringing it back to like something that would be an easy decision to make, or reminding them of how far they've come. Like, look at this beautiful design you've put together. You're doing a great job. Like, I know we have a couple more details, and on Steph and my side of it, we have significantly less details to go over. It's actually like shocking when we do have a custom request for something and we think we've covered everything that we need to cover, and we send it to the back office and they come back and they ask us 6 more questions. And I was like, well, hold on, because I wasn't prepared for those. So, I mean, we get decision fatigue as well in here as designers. But again, our team approach is a really good way to, if I don't have it, I don't have the creativity that day, Steph takes it over, and vice versa.
And it's weird too. There's days where you wake up and you're like, I don't know if I have it today.
Right? Yeah. Or like you feel really confident about somebody's design when you leave, and then you go home and you're like, oh my God, was that a good choice or a bad choice? And you revisit it the next day and you're like, okay, yes, I still think it was a really good choice. And then you see it come to fruition and you're like, I'm so glad that I trusted my gut, that they trusted me, because it turned out beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that definitely happens to me a lot. There will be times where it's like 6 or 7, because really my favorite thing to do is to work a little bit later when everybody's out of the office, especially when you're drawing, because you just like disappear. You have good music on and you're drawing, and sometimes you get in the rhythm and it just goes, and it like everything feels perfect. There are other times where you're sitting there moving things around and it's just like, it's just not working. You know, it's kind of there, but it's just not. So for my decision making, when it comes to that sort of stuff, that's usually a good time to put it down and then come back later. For homeowners, because of that decision making fatigue, which you are correct, is 100% real. What we found, especially in custom, because it takes a little bit longer to go through the whole process, is we want to start to set up gates with them to say, like, I don't need you to worry about what knobs are going to be on your cabinets before we figure out maybe how the floor plan is going to work.
Yeah.
And so when we start with the homeowner and we're starting on the design process, we'll say, okay, basically, what do you think you need for rooms, and what do you think you need for bathrooms, and do you want a first floor suite, or you start to ask those sorts of questions, and most people are pretty comfortable answering those, and so that gets it going a little bit. Sometimes people will bring in a floor plan and they're like, I really like this, but I wish this worked this way. It's like, great, that's fine. Let's do that, because now you're comfortable with the space, you've identified with it, and then now we're making this thing yours. I mean, quite frankly, my expectation over the last maybe 7 or 8 projects was that it would just be people coming in with nothing and going, hey, how do here's what I want designed, here's what I want built. For the most part, people have been going on, pulling the signature plans and saying, look, this stuff checks all the boxes. The boxes are just not in the right area. So let's start to navigate. And for me, and especially because I'm coming from 20 years of remodeling, I go, great. All I'm doing is taking a house plan and then remodeling that house.
Yeah.
So the weirdest thing that I have noticed is I'm so used to restriction and footprint. Remodel, oftentimes you can't go super far.
Right.
And so when somebody goes, oh, just move this a foot farther, my knee-jerk reaction in my head is to go, well, you're just going to move that a foot? Like that's going to take a lot of work. And it's like, oh yeah, no, I can do, there's nothing here.
It's just lines on a paper at this point.
So you keep people going along that path and go, let's get the flow. And we don't need it to be 100% correct. Let's just get it close. And then with the programs that we use with Chief Architect and with the 3D modeling stuff, we can go into a room and say, okay, let's throw a bed in. And now let's see, where do you have a TV in the room? Where does that TV want to go? And then where do you want the sunlight to come into the room? And then that's how you go from just a basic plan to now you're starting to fit the space out. We still haven't picked anything yet. You're just fitting the space out. You're getting them comfortable with how they're going to live inside of their home. And then once we get to that point, we go, hey, why don't we step into this next step of our design and let's start to make selections. And the first thing we generally do is floor.
Yep.
Just because it's going to be the most dominant material in the house. And especially, again, I don't know if do you guys generally start with kitchens or floor?
Well, floors in the kitchen
Yeah.
is usually where we start. Yep. We'll start
Yeah.
with like the kitchen design, but I generally work from the floor up.
Yeah.
I
Floor,
prefer to start
cabinet.
with the cabinet. To me,
Mhm.
the cabinet drives the floor.
Especially if they're working with like a stained cabinet
Yes.
because
Oh, yeah.
that'll interact with a wood look floor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so same here. We generally, that first appointment ends up being flooring, but let's talk about cabinets, or cabinets and let's talk about flooring.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of the great capabilities that we have in custom homes and in remodeling as well is I'll take my computer and I'll sit there, and as they're making decisions and talking, I'm changing the cabinetry plan so that way we can export a semi photorealistic image of here's what this space is going to look like. And so then they get addicted to the idea of, well, yeah, let's make this change. And it also does a great job of somebody will hold something up and you see everybody's face sort of twist a little bit and go, that's not going to work. And you go, well, why don't we just why don't we just click it on and see what it does?
Mm-hmm.
Which is a great way to filter out things that you do not like.
Yes.
That's so valuable that you have that visualization ability. That's something we don't currently have. We're working on it, but I'd say that's the benefit of.
And I've seen some of the tools that are coming down the pike for neighborhood homes.
Yeah.
And I think people are going to have far more ability to be able to really sort of visualize what their space is going to look like before it gets built.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the one benefit that you guys have is you have a neighborhood of homes. So,
That's true. They can physically
Yes, we
walk
do
through
have, like,
their
a-
house.
so if somebody
Point of-
goes, well, does this stone go with this siding? You go, well, let me check. Go to this address.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I'm going to try to let them know that you're coming, but don't be super obvious that you're taking photos of their house. But then they can go into the neighborhood and they can see, okay, yeah, I think that this stone does work with this siding, and then that gives them that confidence. So, and we get to do that too. I mean, I'm actually going to talk to you guys about the people that we met this morning who are from Baltimore.
Yes, I actually already sent Courtney the addresses for
good.
them. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they're really super, super awesome people. Have a good design style, but just want to more confirm than anything. Like they're not overly nervous in finishes, but they just want to confirm, and having that ability to say, yeah, I think here's a couple houses that are close, is a huge, huge resource.
Absolutely.
Adam, here in closing, let's ask you, what is maybe the most memorable custom home, either just the entire project and what made it special, or a specific design detail that made it special to you from your 23-year history at EG?
Okay, well, this might be a little bit easy, but I'll explain why. So, one of my very best friends he's from here. He moved down to Fort Lauderdale. I had actually thought that I would want to move down there one day. But Lancaster ended up changing and being such a cool and interesting city that I was like, yeah, there's no real reason to leave here. And as a matter of fact, now that he has sort of lived his life in Fort Lauderdale, and his wife Kaylee is just a really engaging, interesting person, very good design eye. They started to buy some property up here because I think he was missing home a little bit. And I think the people up here are a little bit different than down there, and a little bit more connected. Not to say anything bad about people in Florida, just that I think what he felt in friends and family was a little bit stronger up here. And so they did a remodel with us 2 years ago, and I was very nervous about it because he is such a close friend, and I didn't want to fail. And also because they live, almost 2,000 miles away, and you're trying to design something and work with them over the phone and over video, and it can be a little bit daunting. That project went really, really well. Had quite a few meals at that house, and since then they have now decided that they're going to probably move up here a little bit more permanently. So we're in the middle. We're about to break ground, actually next week, on their forever home. So their house that they are now moving back to Lancaster. Kaylee, it took a little bit of negotiating with Kaylee, but she's actually now gotten her real estate license up here.
Okay.
And so, and she has made quite a few friends. And so the fact that not only did I get to draw a house, but that I also get to help build for for a family that I care so much about, that cares about me, and that I'm going to get to experience and spend time in, and help pull these details together and actually use the things that we're talking to them about, I think is really exciting. I think it sort of shows that they trusted us as a company, and understandably that they trusted me as a friend. But they talk about Courtney all the time, who's our selections manager. They talk about Dave Wells all the time, who's a pre-construction manager, but the guy who essentially helped pull their whole project together. Justin and Darren, again, were both sort of involved in that project a little bit. Like, they look at all of us as their team. So it's not just, hey, Adam's my buddy, and being my buddy, can you build me a house? They trust us, and they trust EG to not only to do that original remodel, but really now to build a house that they're going to spend the rest of their lives in. I think that's really a phenomenal thing. So probably right now, that's what my favorite thing is.
I love
awesome.
that story.
Yeah.
Thank you
That's
for
awesome.
sharing.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for spending your Wednesday afternoon with us, and we'll talk to you next time.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.